share for a minute, please? Thank you, my lovely. Okay, so welcome to Qualified Tutors Book Club. We run this once a month, and it is the lightest and friendliest book club in the universe because nobody reads the book but me. Because I am a great big English nerd, and what I love to do is share stories and insights with you. I happen to have chosen what I call small and mighty books. And my book that's coming out this year, which I hope will qualify for that list, is also a short book because we live differently now. And great big books like this much loved masterpiece, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Yeah, most highly effective people don't read books this long anymore. They read what Jan sent. They read the notes, right? I do read I do read fiction. I'm back into fiction at the moment. And for me, yeah, and you've got this one. So for me, fiction is a long, slow, immersive, enjoyable read. And non-fiction is, tell me what I need to know. Is it all in the first chapter? Then I will only read the first chapter. Am I right? Okay, great. So out of respect to all of our time, what I'm rather going to do is I'm going to introduce you to 3 things, to the author and to the 2 key concepts of the book. And based on that, we're going to explore what those mean for us. Is that all right? Awesome. So Seth Godin, the author, is the teacher of my soul. Okay. And I tell you why. Seth Godin and Nina Simone are basically, what I'm made of. And the reason for that is that although ostensibly he talks about marketing, what he really talks about is connection, value, community, being of service, and basically making something that is so flumin' awesome, it's inevitable that it will be successful and appreciated. It's the concepts that Qualified Tutor is built on. And if you want to know more about this, he has a book called This is Marketing, which I might find in a minute. And that book has a course associated with it. The course is called TMS, This is Marketing, and it's the course that Qualified Tutor was incubated in. So in 2019, my dad passed away. I had all of this like love and headspace and need to immerse myself in something. I developed the Qualified Tutor concept and I landed in this course. Somebody just said to me, you need to know Seth Godin. I looked up Seth Godin. There was a course starting next week and I joined. You know those moments, those serendipity moments? Okay. So, of course, I read and listened to every book since then, but the 100-day course was based on community dialogue, just like ours. It was based on a mastermind approach. So learning what somebody's business is and then supporting and challenging them like we did in supervision circles. So basically, everything that is good about Qualified Tutor, with a couple of exceptions, was learned from Seth Godin. Is that a good enough recommendation? Okay, awesome. Now, this is his best book. It is also his shortest book. And if you listen to it on audio, what you'll discover is it was actually a presentation that he delivered in one day. And it's almost entirely just a transcript of that presentation. The 2 concepts of the book that you will have seen from the front cover that Jan shared. Jan, could you just treat me to thank you again. Thank you. Okay. So so the title is The Dip, a little book that teaches you when to quit and when to stick. Interesting way round, right? Should say when to stick and when to quit. That's what you would anticipate. But the first thing that he talks about is the power of quitting. And he says that winners quit. Winners quit all the time. They quit things that aren't helpful. They quit things that they can't win at. They quit all the things that don't serve their ultimate goals. Okay. And there are 2 visual models that he uses. I'm gonna remove the. Actually, Jan, I'm so sorry. Could you stop sharing because I really need to see everyone. So you've seen this concept of a dip, right? The majority of the book is about a dip. There are 2 concepts in the book: cul-de-sacs and dips. Now, what is a cul-de-sac? Please, someone tell me. Go on, Dee.
It's a no-through road. It doesn't go anywhere.
Doesn't go anywhere. Doesn't go anywhere. Okay. So the question about whether to quit or to stick is now not based on how hard the road is. It's based on, does the road go anywhere?
Yeah.
Okay. This is massive in life, right? Because then you look at every relationship, every business project, every academic endeavor, every health choice or purchase that you make based on, is this a road that's going to take me somewhere, or am I going to be right back where I started? And he uses the first half of the book to explore what a cul-de-sac can be defined as. And he talks about work contexts where you know you're not going anywhere, right? And you think that you are bashing through and persisting, but with a little bit of clarity, you would see ain't nowhere to go. Okay. I'm going to open this out to you and I'm going to bring you the second concept later on. What are your thoughts about cul-de-sacs, please? Go ahead, Jan.
Yeah, I just have a question. When do you know it's a cul sex? Probably you don't know.
Probably you don't know.
Yeah. How do you know it's not going to lead to anywhere? Because you cannot foresee in the future.
Claire?
Oh, they're quite, I don't know. How do you define a cul-de-sac?
Dee, what was your definition?
I just think neighbours.
Yeah, me too.
Well, I
My
live in
mother-in-law lives in a cul-de-sac.
Yeah.
I live up a cul-de-sac up a cul-de-sac. So
Oh, that
Oh,
is,
wow.
how is that done? So I can see how that's done. So
Yeah.
Dee, tell me again your definition of a cul-de-sac.
the no through road doesn't go
No
anywhere.
through road. Claire, have you ever been in a cul-de-sac? Emotionally or professionally?
Oh, uh, possibly. I don't know. I can't
I
think
have.
of.
I'll give you an example. So I
Mm.
was deputy head in a school, and I was never going to be given headship in that school because there were certain key expectations that were really, really specific to the ethos of the school that I was never going to match. I knew I was in a cul-de-sac. You could also call it a glass ceiling or a ceiling, right? Yeah. So that for me was a cul-de-sac. I knew that however much goodness and commitment I brought to the school, there was a limit to how much I could do, not just how much I would get paid, not just whether I would get the status of a higher role, but genuinely, I wouldn't be able to take this journey with them any further because the blockages were not temporary, they were structural. Can anybody give me an example of a cul-de-sac in your life? Sharona, you've unmuted yourself. Does that mean you want to?
Oh no, I think I was
No,
automatically on unmute.
don't worry.
But cul-de-sacs, I think generally like relationships,
Okay.
friendships, sometimes they reach a cul-de-sac, sometimes you're at the end of the road. So I have quite a few examples over the years for that. In terms of how do you know you're in a cul-de-sac or not, which I think who asked that before.
Yeah.
I sometimes feel, sometimes you may think, oh, this might not be going anywhere, but you get little kind of glimmers of hope or some kind of reactions or pushes or, a show of interest. I think it is worth continuing on this journey. Somebody needs it or I'm serving something. So little hopes, but I was talking to somebody else who started pursuing a business, and she said, she doesn't even get any of those little signs, and maybe that's the big sign for her that it's a cul-de-sac.
That's
So,
really,
I think,
really insightful. That's
I think
really,
sometimes if you feel like there is something, or even if you're in a even if you're slow, or even if you've stepped out of whatever it is you're pursuing, sometimes you get little signs that maybe you should continue.
yeah, that's really, really helpful. It's also leaning towards the optimism that is our nature here. But I do think that it is of service to actually be able to see when there isn't. So the story of your friend, when there wasn't, yeah, when your energy would be better served backing out of that cul-de-sac and rerouting, that's going to be important. Rosanna and then Dee.
Yeah, I was just going to say it's a really good point about sometimes you could be in one and not know. And I think going back to the definition of a cul-de-sac as being a no through road, it's like, well, what do you want to get through to? Because sometimes I actually think that that might be okay if it's a temporary project, for example, that you're taking on. You know that there's a finite kind of end to it, and maybe you're just doing it for some kind of instrumental purpose. It's not necessarily something that is going to be long term. But I think the problem is when you go through and you're thinking, you're kind of under the illusion that it's going to go somewhere. And I think in that case, you've kind of, it's going to sound a bit vague, but I think you need to trust your gut, really, because I think sometimes we know deep down, but we do have that attitude of like, I'm just going to keep pushing through. And I think in a society where we're taught to kind of persevere and never give up and just be constantly working on things, it's really, really easy to just go so far down the wrong road in the illusion that it's going to lead somewhere. And I think also you have to think about, again, like, what does that somewhere mean to you? Is it alignment with your values? Is it a stepping stone to something else? Or is it an end in itself? And I think without knowing that, you're not really going to know, because one person's cul-de-sac might be somebody else's through road potentially.
Whoa,
So,
that's fantastic. And
so
it's
yeah,
absolutely, I mean, look, with the example of my professional experience and that cul-de-sac that I was sitting in there, absolutely right. Somebody else, that would have been a through road for them. I just didn't tick all the boxes. And it was helpful for me to finally see that. And your point about a project, I think, is really important. But I would suggest that a project is just a short road. It's okay. You just get to the other end of it. You got paid for it. You got the benefit of that journey, and it took you on to the next, little piece of navigation. But I wouldn't say it's a cul-de-sac. I would say that there's something about a cul-de-sac that is about squandering your energy, that is about, circling. And I think what Rosanna said about trusting your gut, I think that's born of experience. And I think that these conversations help us to bring out that experience. And that's why this book is so important. Dee.
My switch from teaching to tutoring happened because I needed to protect my mental health. I was coming out of another depressive episode, and several things happened, including a colleague deciding to leave who I worked really closely with. And I felt without her support, my life was going to be even more difficult in that work environment. So and they've been offering redundancy, but it wasn't open at the time that I was really struggling. But this voice in my head said, well, if it opens again, perhaps you should consider it. Funnily enough, 2 weeks later, they reopened redundancy. And as I did that, a number of things happened, including 2 other people who I already knew popping up who were tutors. And it just kind of dripped a feeling of comfort that making this massive change was actually going to be a good thing, because I did feel like I was in a cul-de-sac, mainly because of my new line manager, who was now putting so many barriers in my way to what I wanted to achieve, that it was having an impact on my health and everything else. And a door opened, the cul-de-sac opened up, and off I went. And here I am now, feeling
Fantastic.
like I'm doing what I absolutely need to do. I was in my happy place. I was a round peg in a round hole before, but now I'm a square peg in a square hole.
Isn't that great? That's beautifully. She's the most quotable person I know. I just want to share with you that something really magic happened on the WhatsApp group yesterday, and some of us were involved in the conversation. Someone asked a question about how to do something well in the context of tutoring maths. And we went round the houses, none of which I understood because I don't speak maths. But it came right down to that first person who asked the question said, I'm really upset with myself because I confused the student. And somebody else popped up and straight away said, there is no disappointment here. The fact that you sought advice about how to do it properly is entirely in service of the student, and you are worth your weight in gold. And that was a magic moment that happened yesterday that I'm so proud to have been like, and I was cooking, so I was just watching this happen, and it was like, oh, that's so yummy. But it was genuinely about helping us to navigate through together. So definitely square pegs and square holes. And it's sort of an indicator of what good looks like, that kind of a conversation, isn't it? Claire, did you have your hand up before? Okay, so cul-de-sacs. We've explored what you might want to quit, right? Relationships where you're squandering your energy, professional routes where you're squandering your energy. I want to ask you whether there are cul-de-sacs in your tutoring, because I think there are. Go on, Sharana.
Not in the cohort for this year, but last year I definitely had one student who she was absolutely lovely and the parent was lovely, but she did suffer from very, very short attention span. And so would forget things from one week to the next. And I'm sure we've all kind of been there. And so we came up with another solution of maybe tutoring her 3 or 4 times a week, but for 10, 15 minutes to make it really short. And then I thought, okay, this was a bit of a burden in terms of time. And she was going to be doing foundation anyways as well. And I said to the mom that I don't think I'm the right person for this. A bit like learning how to read. Usually the parent teaches the child how to read, and it's something that's done every single day, a little bit every day. And I suggested to the mom, why don't you learn the material and you can do a tiny bit with her every single day, because she will need a lot more support. And it was one of those where I didn't think I was going to be adding any value, and she needed somebody in person close to squeeze in 5-10 minutes whenever it was convenient, not at 4:30 p.m. when she was tired or anything like that. So it was a very cul-de-sac and I had to pull away. I didn't think this was any good, but that's just a tutoring example. Yeah.
It's full of integrity, that example. Anyone else been there? Go ahead, Dee.
Yeah, I had a student through a tutoring business based in Dubai. I think the family were Iranian, but working with this student, I was fairly convinced that he was undiagnosed ASD, and he's an only child, so the parents potentially didn't have any idea that there were issues going on, or culturally they weren't prepared to acknowledge. And because I didn't feel I had the necessary expertise, and doing it online as well, I had to walk away because I didn't feel I was serving the student in the best way. I felt he needed in-person help, but of course that depended on the parents acknowledging that there was something that he needed help with, and I'm not entirely convinced that ever happened. But for me, I had to step away because it wasn't filling my bucket. It was emptying my bucket, the stress I was going through.
Yeah. Just for context, Dee's referring to this book that we covered.
Oh, wow.
How full is your bucket?
Full is your bucket?
Which is about positivity, and it's about filling and emptying your bucket with positive and negative experiences, and being really mindful of your bucket.
Wow, interesting.
It makes your work more sustainable, doesn't it? But for me, that specific example of that student is really interesting, because I thought I'd opened a conversation that was about your career and your life, but actually we're talking now about every single student. Is this a student that you can see it through with, and there'll be a long dip, there'll be a long slog, but you can get somewhere? Or is this a student that you are never going to be able to work through those barriers? Somebody else might, or a different delivery model might, but it's not you. And so the best thing you can do is not waste their time, their money, their opportunity for input. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I was just going to say I really agree with that. And I think it's so easy well, from my experience anyway, when I take on a job, I kind of think like I've got to see it through. But obviously with tutoring, more so than maybe other jobs that are in different industries where you're taking on maybe project-based work, it is often quite a long-term thing. Like if you start working with a student and they're in, I don't know, year 9 or something, you might be tutoring them all the way through their GCSEs and maybe even beyond. So it's so important to make sure that there's a fit there. And there are so many things like boxes that need to be ticked, not just is it worth my time and money, but is it actually going to be a good relationship across the board? Like, are the parents happy? Is the student happy? Am I happy? And I think oftentimes I forget the am I happy bit, because I think of myself as being in a service role and thinking, well, they've paid me, I want to come across as professional, I don't want to let people down. And I think I've actually worked a lot on my own kind of like people pleasing tendencies, because I find that can be a real barrier to taking on work that's appropriate for you. And I think it's so hard sometimes to get a balance between being professional, wanting to provide a good service, but actually making sure that you're happy in the process. And it's something that I've worked on a lot, and I think I've gotten a lot better at, but could probably still afford to do some work on, I think, going forward. So
yeah, Yeah, people pleasing is definitely a thing round here. And I think that one of the things that we do is protect each other from that. So having the opportunity to talk through your own professional practice makes you much less vulnerable to making poor decisions to please someone else, right? Claire, do you mind if I draw on you for a second? Because your business model, which I'm going to ask you to describe in a second, it's designed to avoid cul-de-sacs. You left school, right? And you built a business that is ideally got the distance. Can you describe what you did there and why?
It's I now sort of refer it as a little library of courses run and produced by teachers that want to share and teach, but they're all recorded. You haven't got that one-to-one format because it's just an alternative way. You know, if they want to do tutoring, they can, but some people can't afford tutoring, so this is an alternative. So we've got GCSEs, we've got A levels, Key Stage 3, multiple different subjects, languages, all sorts on there. So it's been like that. It's been like that. It has. It's like but it's taken about sort of over a year now, and we're where we are now. But I had lots of other ideas before that. And I think life, maybe I did hit lots of cul-de-sacs then, and they're like, no, so go along, you try something, no, go back, and then oh no, go back. And now I think I'm on the motorway. I think.
We'll get there in a second, my lovely. I'm gonna help you to manage your expectations about that bit. Yes. But could you just see if you can answer Jan's question then? How did you spot what was a cul-de-sac?
It didn't work. There was negatives, and in my opinion on life is that if there's resistance, change. Follow where you're normally guided, I think, in life, and you want to, I want to do that, and then someone comes up, no, do that, and then you're like, oh. So always know that life is guiding you, and it's leading you to where you are going to be, even if you want to be over there, and it's like, no, you got to be over there, and you just got to accept it, really.
That's gorgeous. Welcome, Mark, and welcome, Jenna, when you're ready. I'm going to call you out on that slightly because you're a runner. And if you stopped doing things when they got difficult, you'd be like me, a walker. So could you explain to me how, on the one hand, you know how to push through, because you've just said it's been a year and a long slog. How do you know when to push through and when?
Oh, we're frozen.
I froze?
Yeah, so when to push through.
Yeah. Dia making you co-host. Your Wi-Fi lets us down.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So what was the question? When to make?
How did you know? You're a runner. You work. Yeah. You're able to push through. How did you know those few projects weren't the ones, and this one was one to push through on?
I think there was just a demand. I think that was it. I wasn't actually achieving, that gut feeling, that achieving. There were still lots of people needing that help, and I'm with a possible ADHD mind. I'm very creative. I'm like, right, okay, let's go beyond this. That sort of thing. So, yeah, I just felt I wasn't achieving what I actually wanted to achieve.
Okay, Sharon has given a bit of an answer that's been reiterated by Claire. Jan, do you want to have a go at answering your question of how do you spot a cul-de-sac?
Yeah, for me, I still feel like a little bit uncertain and confused when you exactly know that's a cul-de-sac and you should not move forward, because sometimes I think Rosanna just said maybe there's some silver liner there. Maybe just after when you push a bit more, you will see the open door. So because right now we're more like taking a step back and use our hindsight bias.
Yes.
So it didn't work out at that time. So it was a cul-de-sac. But what if you push a bit more and then you will find a different path?
Okay, awesome. So let's talk about pushing through. Let's talk about the dip. So you saw the visual is just, it starts, it's all slow, you know, downhill, and people say, yeah, that's a delightful idea, and you haven't put any money into it yet, and you stay up at night because you're so excited, and your possible ADHD brain is like firing off awesome ideas. And it feels downhill, and you feel like, blimey, if this is what this business looks like and feels like, I could do this forever. Yeah. And then you get to that point where you're like, I've made enough and come far enough to want to see this through, but all of a sudden I'm not getting the positive feedback that I was expecting. All of a sudden there's a long slog here. All of a sudden there's tension and there's stress and there's pressure and there's investment. And we see this in the tutoring community all the time. We see each of us go through this. Yeah. And it's really, really important to see it, because we have to be here to support each other. All of our businesses are in service of students, and sometimes we have to lift each other up. But so there's two things here. Number one is, it's actually useful that there's resistance, because you're only going to get through if you're really committed. So actually, that resistance then becomes a differentiator. And if you are the person who is so committed to this path that it's not a cul-de-sac for you, it's a dip for you, you can keep going, then you can be, and this is a really intentional phrase that Seth Godin uses, you can become the best in the world. Now, he defines the best in the world in really, really wise terms, yeah? Because it's based on the needs of the user. The best supermarket in the world for me is the one at the bottom of my road. It doesn't matter that there's a better one 20 minutes away, because it loses in convenience what it gains in, you know, being stocked. And therefore, it is not the best for me. So all of a sudden, the best in the world becomes something that's really niche. We know that the online space has totally flipped the way that markets work. Mass marketing is not a thing anymore. We don't all watch the same adverts on the same 4 channels, right? We don't all go to school the next day and have watched Neighbours and EastEnders. We're all in this world of niches. I don't know if you've come across the idea of the short head and the long tail. So it goes like this. The highest ranking product on Amazon gets double the amount of orders as the second highest ranking on Amazon. Not 10% less, 100% less, yeah? So there is this great big bunch up of the highest valued products. And then everything else is this long, long, long tail of niche. And you only need to own your own little niche to be able to access your people in your space. And so my coffee shop at the bottom of my road is the best coffee shop for me and my friends to meet up with. Yeah. Or the kosher one, because I can drink and eat there. But whatever it is that are my requirements, that's all I have to meet. What does that mean to you as a business owner, as a professional, as a person who's moving through the world? You get to be the best in the world at something. You just have to choose what it is. You have to choose that it's got legs, yeah, that you can go all the way through with it. And then you have to keep going. And that way you get to be the best in the world. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Can I just say about cul-de-sac?
Come on.
Yeah. Sometimes you find a little alleyway in a cul-de-sac that leads you to somewhere else.
That's what happened to Dee.
Push through.
Yeah. And it's not there. It's off there somewhere. And you
Yeah.
have a system to feel around and find it. I mean, we talk about pivoting, right? And we talk about, there's a beautiful book that's written by the creator of Ways. And it's called, and you know, like the best books, like Everything You Need to Know is in the title. It's called Fall in Love with the Problem, Not the Solution.
Yeah.
The problem the qualified tutor exists to solve is raising standards in an unregulated space. Yeah. The problem that National Tutors, Claire's business, exists to solve is making tutoring affordable and helping teachers to have that additional income. The problem that Jan is trying to solve is that she wants to make online learning more exciting through gamification for students. Am I right? So we each have our own solution that we're trying to solve. All we need to do is fall in love with that and pursue it. Again, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I really like the way how you define best, because best is very personalized. It's not the same for everyone. Yes, I really like that insight in the definition of best.
It's based on an abundance mindset. It's based on
Yes,
understanding
exactly.
that, you know, and don't get me on my soapbox here, but I have a real problem, Rosanna, you've heard me say this before. I have a real problem with the idea of the best tutor. Because the best tutor is different for my child than it is for Claire's child. And it's different from one of my children than the other one, and different subjects and different stages and different sets of needs. So best becomes a really nuanced conversation where it's actually about alignment.
I winced when you said best in the world, because it's not a very British attitude.
No.
To say that to yourself, and other cultures have a different attitude to you can be anything you want to be, which is something that I find difficult. But the way you then qualified it, I fully agree with and accept that. If you define what you mean by that, and then the way you did, I can fully accept that. You've got your niche, and you can be really, really good at that little niche. I want a limited business. I don't want to be, I don't need to earn a salary or replace a salary anymore. And I want to tutor partly because of my frustrations with the curriculum and the inaccessibility to many students in my subjects, which are science subjects. And so, I want to just concentrate on that and do that well and make that difference. And that's going to be enough. And that's the other thing that my wife said to me when I was a teacher was, good enough. I never felt I was good enough. And even though I knew I was doing good work, it never felt good enough, and I could always do more. And she used to get really annoyed with me during the holidays. I would fiddle with my lesson planning and my curriculum delivery and things like that. She said, "What are you doing that for?" I said, "Well, it can be better, and I'm interested." But yeah, I think that's really important for young people to have that defined. And immediately, just a moment ago, because I immediately winced when you said that. I can be the best, because it's not a very British thing to say. You can be anything you want to be. Well, my experience is not always. But if you then nuance,
never going to be a basketball player.
Yeah, if you can then nuance it in the way you did, then yes, and it needs to be explained like that, because again, people like me do tend to shy away from that expression.
I really, really appreciate that. And I think, firstly, I'm not taking credit. This is Seth Godin's material based on his book, The Dip. And it gives me strength constantly. It really, really helps me personally.
But you are distributing that. You are bringing that out. If anyone, that should be the mainstream thought, not you can be anything. No, it's you can be anything if you choose, if you control this path.
And this is and the way to be anything is by quitting the things that are cul-de-sacs, the things that you cannot be the best at. And being the best at being my daughter's mum is its own journey, and its own journey of exploration. James, I'd love to hear from you next, but Mark, I really want to come back to that idea of Britishness. Can we circle back in a minute?
Yeah, I just finish off what I was saying now, that I accept what you're saying but also I think with the cul-de-sacs that there is a need to develop resilience. If it's all plain sailing, when you come up against it, when it starts getting choppy waters, you fall apart.
Yeah, so we've been describing in this conversation, and I will just share it with you because I know that you came in at past. We've discussed cul-de-sacs where there's no point in having resilience because you're not going to get through, or a dip where it is important to have that resilience because that is what's going to help you get through and distinguish yourself. And being intentional about what you stick to and what you quit. Go ahead.
I just caught that, and I think there's always learning.
Yeah.
Even with the cul-de-sacs that really you're banging your head against the wall. If you you can learn in future, I'm not going to bang my head against the wall.
Well, as long as you learn it,
as long as you learn, and
Jan brought
that's
up
such a thing to pass on to our students as well.
That's interesting.
It's the growth mindset, and
Yet, definitely. And should my child be doing Latin when he's struggling with maths? Possibly not. Possibly that is a waste of his energy when it needs to be redirected towards maths. So what you bash your head up against and learning not to make those same mistakes again is the work that we do here, because otherwise we all fall into the same habits. So Jan, right at the beginning, asked us, how can you tell what's a cul-de-sac? And the answer is you learn it from experience and from conversations like this. And you learn from that experience to be more intentional or to look for those alleyways next time. James, what are your thoughts?
Well, from my experience, it's certain customers when you know that you have that gut feeling where you know a customer's going to be really awkward and always,
Don't know what you mean.
trying to negotiate,
Claire, I hope it's not me.
your price down and things like that all the time. So it's knowing to sort of I've got more of a gut feeling now from my experience of that, of knowing when to back out of that customer, because you just have that feeling that they're going to cause a lot of sort of more issues than the job's worth for yourself.
Rosanna's nodding her head off. Go on, Dolly, go on, dive in.
I just can massively relate to everything that James just said, basically, because it reminded me of a business relationship that I've had with a particular company, and going back to relationships as well, because I know a lot of us have tied this into relationships too, but I just had this company that I was doing some projects with, and I gave them a few chances because at first it was I quite enjoyed the work and everything, but it just got to a point where anytime they asked me for my rate on something, I would give it and they'd just be like, is that really what you're charging? Is there any room for... Yeah, no. And it just got to a point where, and the other thing as well, going back to your point about experience being really key to this, it got to a point where I just felt a kind of dread. And like James said, you get to a point where you just feel like this is more hassle than it's worth. And I think that kind of relates to Jan's question of how do you know it's a cul-de-sac, at least in terms of business relationships. Yeah, if it's kind of depleting your resources so much and you're like, do you know what? I'm not getting good experience from this. I'm not getting good vibes, to use that word. I'm not getting enough in the way of not just money, but also, how I'm investing my time and my effort. And yeah, I just got to a point with this company where I was just I don't think I can work with you anymore, because every time it would just be a really painful interaction. And even if we'd agreed on the scope of the project, I'd say this is my rate, and then they'd say, yeah, that's fine. The second we'd start the project, they would add on loads more work, and I'd say, okay, that's fine, but I need to be paid more. And then they would just be like, no, can't it just be part of the original payment? And it's well, no, I mean, I'd like to think in analogies as well. And I use the analogy of, because I've had a lot of house renovations.
I said it would going there.
I said it would be like getting my bathroom guy in and being like, oh, by the way, while you're here, can you just renovate my kitchen as well? And expect him to be happy with being paid the same amount,
You'll end up with the toilet in your kitchen, that's what.
Pretty much, yeah. So anyway, yeah, just go back to James. Yeah, the reason I was nodding like mad is because it made me think of that particular company. So.
And if you don't mind, James, do you mind if I bring up another aspect? So you talk when we had a conversation recently about your background in tutoring, you told me that at one point you were going into, was it real estate?
Yeah, surveying.
So
yeah.
You pivoted out of a cul-de-sac there.
Yeah, because I just felt it wasn't for me. I was writing reports all day, and I felt like I couldn't do this forever. I couldn't it was depressing for me. So I wanted something more for me.
And did you have a moment, thank you for being so honest, did you have a moment where you were like, if I quit this, that makes me a quitter and a failure?
Yeah.
And isn't that worth noticing? Because I mean, you don't look like a quitter now, you look like somebody who's an awesome tutor. So isn't that amazing that we Mark said, sometimes we have to push through, we have to have resilience. True. And yet you're not committed to putting your life on a track that doesn't suit you, because we no longer live in a culture where you choose one career for your whole life. You have the freedom to recalibrate. Sheryl Sandberg uses in her gorgeous book Lean In, she uses an analogy that careers are no longer ladders, right, where you work in a bank and you sit on the same stool for 40 years and then you retire, and they give you a carriage clock. It's a climbing frame, where it's a climbing frame, she calls it a jungle gym, where you can move upwards, backwards, sideways, recalibrate. And the thing that I loved about that is, firstly, it's about play, but secondly, there's a nice view wherever you are. Whereas I don't know if you've noticed, but on a ladder, the only view you've got is of the guy above you. Not a very nice perspective. So having that opportunity to actually reroute becomes an adventure. If you understand that that's not a problem, quitting is not a problem if you're in a cul-de-sac. It's a major problem if you're in a dip. What are your thoughts?
I know you were saying that what you were saying was just a comment on what I said about resilience, but it doesn't work on its own. Exactly what you said. Your resilience works alongside what you've just said in terms of you can leave and move on to something else. I taught in 10 schools, and the longest was 7 years. Couple one because it was the wrong place, and that was about valuing myself, not in terms of putting myself above other people, but valuing myself and what I wanted out of it, and having that confidence to do that and be able to move on and take the plunge. It wasn't the end of the world. And I think these are things that we hope to instill in students and with teaching them, but we also need to take it for ourselves, that work is about hierarchies, but that's hopefully is slowly changing, and the younger generation understand that much better than we do. So we're all in there. We're in the real transitional phase at the moment. Yes. That's why it's difficult for us, is because we have an old work culture around us, and we are dipping our toes into a new work culture, and hopefully a better one that value yourself and the ability to move and be flexible, and to move and to say, right, okay, this is a cul-de-sac, I need to change direction, is really important. There are all sorts of other factors that affect that for people. Some people really feel they can't, and they've got good reasons for feeling that, even though perhaps not true. But we need to instill that mindset that we are not in that hierarchical situation where we can't do anything about it.
I agree. And I think that there's a lot of negative self-talk that sits behind that as well, isn't that? That sort of, they feel that they can't, even though it's not true. Claire, I'm going to pick on you again for two good reasons. Number one, because you have that instinct for flowing from one thing to the other, which I think is really important here, because that in itself is a life skill that we're pointing at. And the other thing is, because of everyone in this room, you've got the grownest up as children. And so you are seeing them navigate, and I'm really curious to know whether, as Mark's pointed out, their approach to hierarchy and navigating the working world is different to the way we were raised.
Oh, yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Tell us more.
Well,
you look old enough to have a 33-year-old child, Claire.
No, mine 15, 17, 19. So one's at uni. So as I say, one down, two to go. So I think this, when I look at my childhood and their childhood, they're very protected and everything's sort of done for them. I think we were very like hands-on, just get on with it, that sort of thing. And that everything is, and also they're like all, because of technology, it's everything, they want everything now, dum dum dum. So I find it hard with them, because we had to slog, we have to learn and trial all these different things, like get that first job, do like it, don't like, but we still stick with it until something else comes along. With them, it's like, I don't like it, I'm giving it up. It's very quick judgment. Just, I'm like, oh, yeah.
But there's a balance there, isn't it? And sorry, Claire, I wasn't being rude. I have a 33-year-old, a 31-year-old 30-year-old and a 24-year-old. So
Wow.
I am experiencing this change, and that's partly why I said it. And as I said, it doesn't apply to everybody at all. They're very lucky in their circumstances, which they've done themselves. It's not about their backgrounds. And they are very realistic about it, and they have resilience, and they will keep going, but they'll keep going with it looking to do something else. So they won't just jack it. I've got one at the moment who really wants to move, but he's accepted that he has to buckle down for a while until what he wants comes along, because he made a jump before, and what he jumped into has not turned out to what he hoped it would be. So there's a balance in terms of getting that resilience, but also you're right in hanging in there. Can't just and that balance is, for me, quite not right at the moment, certainly in schools anyway. But again, I go back to that idea of sort of valuing yourself that we were talking about just now, and having a clear idea of what it is you are trying to achieve, and without being arrogant, or the alternative is the negative talk you were talking about, Julia, is building your life on the basis of that, and having that as your core philosophy and ideas, your true north.
That's right. That's exactly right. So your true north is exactly what we're talking about in terms of being the best in the world.
And stick to that, but be flexible with it. But it's your primary guide.
Flexible, yeah.
That's right.
Sorry, go on. So, I want to say, look, with the kids, they need to find what they want to do. I mean, you ask my middle son, he has no idea. No idea. So I'm like, this is amazing. And for me, I'm like, oh my God, you can do anything. You can try that and try that and try that. Because of the ADHD thing, he's just like, you can't do that. But my oldest with autism, he's at uni. He's in the second year uni, but he's now dropped it because he wants to change. And that's another cul-de-sac, isn't it? He's like, no, this is not working for me. I'm going to try this route. And now he's got a job at Pets at Home. He's going to go into animal care. And he's just like, yay, he's finding that. But, he's older, and it takes time to do that. I mean, I'm 14, and, I'm now finding out what I want to do. And
you want to build a bar. That's what you want to do.
Well, that's an added bonus.
So it's really interesting, because I was going to share with you, as we're going to wrap up in a few minutes, that my eldest, who is a little bit sort of ASD-ish, is currently making good decisions, and he's making a series of good decisions that's making me wonder where that is in him, right? Where that clarity's come from, what values I was blessed to be able to put into him, where Mark's talking about those values and that instinct for where you want to be. What went right there, please, so that I can repeat it, right? Because there's a certain amount of staying true to yourself and having clarity on defining a true north, and then hearing yourself and building that resilience, that all of that is part of. And when we see and it's lovely to be able to talk, and we always do this, we talk about ourselves and our students at the same time, don't we? Because we're raising ourselves to raise them. And because, as Mark said, we're in this transition generation, there's a lot of parallels between what we need to learn and what we want to teach them. And I always think that it's us that have this luxury of being outside of the classroom, that we have the time to do this reflection. And so it becomes that much more important, because the teachers in the school right now are up to their eyeballs. If we don't start identifying what education should look and feel like and do for our young people, it won't get done. So that's work that's on us. So I would love to leave you with a quick go around. I want to ask you whether you know what you want to be the best in the world at. You can tell me if you can articulate it, or if you can't, it's no worry, but just, I just want to know. Jan, can I start with you?
Yeah, I think I've got a very clear answer to that question. Since what I'm doing right now is to create the most fun and engaging online classroom for the students. So that's what I want to be the best, providing the most fun and engaging virtual classroom tool for teachers and students.
Fantastic. Sharana?
Well, I do want to develop. So my other business, apart from me tutoring myself, is the platform that connects parents with teenagers that tutor. So, and that goes through a roller coaster. But aside from that, in a just high level view, sometimes it's actually really the journey that allows you to meet different people and to have experiences. So, you know,
very often I feel like the whole point of qualified tutor is that the growth that I get, the growth that Odette, that Hannah gets, that each of us get, that journey is its own achievement.
It's almost like an excuse for all these doors to open.
No. Mark, what's your best?
I think it's about really conveying to students and parents what this is all about, really. Learning how to learn is such an important thing for me. And you were talking about being in classrooms, and I used to insist on doing those things. I would start a topic in science, but I'd go back to the real world applications. There is no room in the curriculum for that, and and therefore I would have to strip down the curriculum to allow me to do that appropriately. That took a lot of years' experience. I didn't start doing that until I was fairly far in. So it's about understanding education is being and being able to convey that to other people and put that out there. That the old ideas we have about what it is are outdated, and we should be well past them, but we're still stuck in them.
And we're really happy to share that discussion with you. I think that every time we talk, it sort of pushes that thinking further. I think that's really enjoyable. James, go ahead.
So helping as many children get to the next step in life, and they might need to pass their maths GCSE in order to do that. And my strap line I use is "No one should be left behind."
Thank
That's
you.
what I want to be the best at.
Awesome. Dee?
As my art tutor kept saying to me, it's all about the journey, not the destination. You've got to enjoy the journey, because the destination is actually death.
That's the big secret.
I've learned one important thing in the last 3 years is that groups are not a good fit for me. I tried it and it didn't work, so I stepped back. But based on a session that was run by QT when Sam Moyne came along 2 weeks ago, I have now embarked on a coaching diploma course.
That was good the other night, wasn't it?
Say again?
It was good the other night, the teenage brain.
Oh, amazing. I am still a fairly significant amount terrified about what I've taken on. But we talk about cul-de-sacs, and I did wonder if the coaching thing was a cul-de-sac. But a person who I've known for a little while, who turns out to also be a trained coach, and the feedback I'm getting from her and a couple of other tutors through QT have said to me, "You are going to be an awesome coach."
Yeah.
So the anxiety is still massive, but people are seeing things in me, so I'm starting to see those things, and so I'm going to push through.
I want to share with you that for me, this book is the antidote to that anxiety. So understanding that it's now for you to turn it from a cul-de-sac into a dip. It's now for you to say, I'm going to put the effort in here to turn this coaching course investment into something that's got legs in the long term. That's work that you have to do. Otherwise, if you're not going to do that, it's a cul-de-sac. And if you are, then it's an awesome investment. Elizabeth, do you want to speak, or are you happy?
No.
Chat? Okay. No. You're doing great. Claire?
Mine is making sure education is there for everyone.
Awesome.
That's, and to help teachers. The education is in a dire situation, and I just want to make it available for everybody, because every student deserves an education.
I love it. I love it. I'm gutted that I missed Rosanna's, and I must close on time. So thank you for being here. As you know, my true north, my being the best at, is raising standards and tutoring together, and it's a joy to share that journey with you. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Claire. Thanks, Sharona.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
I was a coach when I was a teacher as well.
What's that?
I was a coach when I was all the time I was a teacher. And
agreed.
Cool.
Mark, you and Dee can have a conversation about that. Connect in the community or in the WhatsApp group. All the best. Bye, guys.